Hello and welcome back to yet another live episode of Green and White, brought to you by Argyle Life in classic Sam Down style. He ends the season. I was want to say how he started it, but how the whole season is gone and made us late. Just like Newcastle in 2010 and Southampton in 2011, Leeds United celebrated on the home park pitch as Plymouth Argyle were relegated. Joining me to discuss exactly that, Dan Ellard, how's things?
Yeah, pretty good. I won't lie to you viewers, I'm very underprepared because I wasn't able to get a ticket for yesterday, so I haven't actually watched the game. So it might be tricky to review something that I haven't watched, but we'll go with the more generic season-based stuff. And do my best to bluff through, having watched the 10-minute highlights on YouTube.
Yeah, nice. Preparation isn't our strong point here, so you'll be absolutely fine. Sam Down, how's things?
Yeah, not bad. I think I've wandered into some parallel universe where Miran Mudlic is replying to Argyle Voodoo's tweets, but apart from that, it's all fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get on to Muslic's discourse later. And Adam Price, how's things?
Yeah, I mean, some of you may already know my immune system has been working in overdrive for the week, so it's nice to have been able to make it. By the sounds of it, I'm a lot better, and I've probably passed it on now to one of you guys after seeing it yesterday, so apologies in advance for the week you're about to experience, but I am fine.
Yeah, good. I feel like you two are in the wrong position, so I'm just going to swap you. That looks better to me. Sam, go on then. As we have done in every podcast this season, give us your post-match run through.
Can you make it good, Sam, so that I know what happened and what to talk about? Cheers, mate.
Yeah, I'll try. It was another very very spirited performance to add to the run of quite spirited performances we've had in recent weeks. We took the lead through a fantastic bit of play between Poulsen and Bundu. Poulsen picks the ball up with a little bit of space. Inch perfect, sort of raking 25-yard pass or so out to Bundu, who dances through probably at least two or three defenders, gets his shot away, and comes back out, takes a bit of an unlucky deflection off Byram and into the net. Argyle are in front, and Leeds are falling apart again, as the Green Army were singing. I think, to be fair, we didn't have a lot in the way of chances, but I think in the first half, they didn't really either. Their one really good one was the one that was blazed over literally about a minute or two after we went 1-0 up. Can't remember who it was that put that one over. I think it might have been Groyev who put it over. But yeah, the one that was on the edge of the box, and he had sort of all the goal to aim at, and it just loops over the bar. Apart from that, they had a lot of threatening balls that went across the box, but not really much clear cut. And we know how good Leeds can be on their day, but I think we defended pretty well. Leeds United came out at the start of the second half, and you could tell that the Leeds, who've been so good in so many games this season, had really come to town. That first 5-10 minutes, they were absolutely on full tilt. They were really opening us up, and you just knew the equaliser was coming. It felt inevitable, and it did. Finished by Nonto. Their fans were up at that point, but weirdly, both from their fans and their players, for such a fans who are famed for being so loud and boisterous, and the team who are the best team in the league, they almost seemed to, for about 20 minutes, forget they had a title to win. For minutes sort of 60 to kind of 80 or so, I think they barely created a thing in the game, Leeds, really. It became a very much a dull, nothing-y game, and that's not criticism, because being a dull game benefited us more than them, because we were the underdog in the game. We were having quite a defensive style. We were very much trying to just take Leeds deep in the game and be satisfactory for the point, and then maybe grab something on the break if we could do. And there were signs of that with when Callum Wright came on. He was very energetic. He added a bit of oomph to our attack. He did completely make the wrong choice with the ball when he had it in a bit of space with one of our breakaways. That if he'd have found Hardy, that could have been 2-1 to Argyle, and sending Leeds home in tears. But there wasn't to be. Just again, sadly, with Callum Wright, maybe once again the end product is the big thing that's lacking. Then obviously comes their goal. It would have cleared out from us. Hardy was given offside. haven't actually seen that back because obviously all the highlights, etc., start from the free kick, so we can't actually whether it was a fair offside. But
yeah, on the sorry mate, on the extended highlights, yeah, he is offside. He's coming back from past the halfway line, so yeah, it is correct.
No, yeah, that's fair enough. Thank you for the intervention. Yeah, correct offside call. They break away. I think Paulson, when the ball comes in, I think Paulson, what does he do? I think he goes for it and doesn't get it. It's a little bit hazy, to be honest with you, and it falls to Solomon, who's in quite a bit of space, angled edge of the box, and it's a great finish past Hazard. And the away end was an absolute jubilation. I think it's the most I've ever seen an away end go off. And you know what? Absolutely, we were sort of dreading how it could go with Leeds fans. Are they going to cause carnage in Plymouth? And whilst a couple of them went for a swim in Sutton Harbour, and I think they left a bit of litter maybe, but there wasn't anything too disastrous. There wasn't any major unrest. There wasn't any businesses or storefronts smashed up to my knowledge. So that's good to know. And yeah, then what I will say to the Leeds fans is they were all an absolute credit to their club when Argyle went round to do a lap of applause, because we were in that exact same situation in reverse at Port Vale, weren't we, 2 years ago, just thinking the home fans just, was wanting the home team to get off and let us come on and celebrate our title. And that was the situation they were in. And they were obviously very, very respectful of Argyle. They actually clapped off to a man. I think the Argyle players, as they did their lap of appreciation at full time. And then obviously they came out and celebrated the title, which me and Aaron did briefly stay behind for. No comment on whether it was to do with Leeds fans liking everything we post relating to Leeds on Twitter and giving us lots of that nice Elon money. Leeds fans do love to big up their club, so we had to get a bit of the content in, didn't we? But yeah, we didn't stay too long. We saw them lift the title, didn't we? And then we let them get on and enjoy their party. We didn't hear any "We Are the Champions" playing as we walked out or anything like that. So I think Argyle clearly took that point on board, that playing that song in any context would have got moans from some people. So they clearly played the safe option. They obviously let Leeds have their party but didn't play any music for them, which was fair enough, I guess. And then we went off and had an evening on the hoe, didn't we? We didn't go quite the way. I didn't go down to the bar, because I know Aaron did, and I wonder how sore his head is doing this morning.
Absolutely fine, to be honest. Absolutely fine.
Immune to it now, are you?
Just getting conditioned to nights out in Plymouth, to be honest. But yeah, I'm sure it would have been a lot sorer had we got that 14-goal swing and stayed up. I can imagine that.
If we got the 14-goal swing, we'd still be drinking now. We wouldn't be on this pod.
Some of us are. Anyway, so that's fine. Adam, anything to add on the game? I mean, Sam's answered like 6 of the questions I had prepared anyway, so.
Nice, yeah. I mean, that's nothing new for us. Anything to add? I mean, I think in general, Leeds have been by far the best team in the league for the entire season. Whether you take that through underlying data, whether you take that for the way they've been playing, certainly the way they've played against us in the reverse fixture, which are pretty embarrassing from our end. But yeah, they just completely played us off the park, as they have every opponent that they faced all season. They're deserved winners of the title. It is a little bit annoying, I'm not going to lie, that it's happened in the last minute, or the stoppage time rather, of our season, when we're just, is there one more glancing blow that we can give the championship on our way down? No, we can't even have that, because in stoppage time we're going to have another last minute winner go in against us, and it's just a final kick in the teeth for us on the way down to League One. But having said that, if you are going to concede a last minute winner, hey, it may as well be in a game that means nothing to us. We're going down anyway, and we'll see that off on the way to pastures new. That's all really that I can add on the game yesterday. I think Sam's, as ever, done a good and extensive job of summarising exactly what we saw. And I just think ultimately it's going to be a case now of where do we go for the future? And I'm not going to go too much into that at the moment, because I know for a fact that they are going to be some of your questions. I don't want to answer another 6 that you've got on the list, Aaron. But yeah, yesterday, Sam said it's a decent performance from our end. The right team won. The right team won yesterday and across the whole season. Yeah, well, was it a bit frustrating for it to end the way it did? Yeah, of course it was. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think there's too much to complain about. At the very least, in the performance we saw yesterday, the complaints are for the 45 games that we experienced before that, which I'm sure we'll cover either now or another time.
Yeah, we're not going to talk too much about the future because I know that Joe has prepared a season review and like a looking forward pod for next week, in which we'll do most of that all in one go. But whilst I got you, Adam, stay unmuted, because obviously last time we played Leeds, as you mentioned up at their place, we went with a back six. This time we opted for a back five. Robert selected over Boateng and Houghton. Do we need to read anything into that, or is it just last game dead rubber for us and just giving a kid a chance?
Well, there's the obvious contractual obligation that if we're playing Leeds, Caleb Roberts must play, and that's obviously a thing now. So we've just got to live with that. Reading it to Houghton, I'm not entirely sure. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Did he pick up a knock, or are we just not seeing him in the squad for
I
reasons?
think, I think
Muslim
said he said on Thursday that Houghton was a doubt, I believe. So
Okay.
why risk him for the last game of the season is how I read that.
Yeah, I thought I had something, so I appreciate the confirmation on that one. So Houghton, I'm not too concerned about. Boateng's a really weird one because he was the guy brought in to shore up our midfield for the second half of the campaign, and on the final day, he's losing his place to a kid. Ultimately, I'm really confused about it. I don't, by the way, dispute the decision. I think Caleb Roberts has a lot to offer, and I think seeing him appear in a game where it's pretty much a dead rubber for us is an absolutely fine thing to do, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can offer in future games. And it's starting him above Boateng is not an issue at all. Where I am confused is not necessarily in the in Muslic's decision making. It's the decision making that has led us to spending £500,000 on transfer deadline day in a panic for a player who the head coach clearly doesn't fancy. Hans on a postcard on that one. Is it a symptom of our winter, our dithering and our panic that we led ourselves to deadline day to get a player who doesn't really seem to fit? Yeah, it probably is. I think it's very clear that I've said it before. Boateng was not our first choice heading into this window. I think there are 4 or 5 midfielders we were linked to quite reliably and quite considerably in the month leading up to deadline day, who for whatever reason did not come in, and we ended up with an outcast from the Scottish Premier League. He may come good. You know, I'm not here to say that I'm writing off Malachi Boateng's career. Of course not. He's got a long contract with us, and you know we could well see him come into his own in League One, and I hope we do. But for what he was brought in for, and what we saw, and the fact that yesterday, as we've mentioned, he only came off the bench in favour of an academy graduate. I think it's been weird how he's been used across the latter part of the campaign, and I'm not necessarily disputing his use. If the manager doesn't fancy him, he doesn't fancy him. But yeah, the fact that we've ended up in this situation, I think, is at the very least a bit odd, and I think realistically pretty damning on how we tackled that transfer window for an area where we knew we were going to need to bring in at least one body. We didn't do it right.
I'm going to quickly follow up on that. What I would say, and I don't disagree with any of that really, is that I do think in his credit, Boateng was good when he came on, actually. And I think it's worth saying that. And actually, so was Bundu. I don't think either of them are good enough to be our one player when we all picked them, unless I'm not mistaken. But I do think, you know, because they only played about a quarter of an hour each. But I do think Boateng and Bundu were actually both pretty good when they did come on. With that, what I was going to say as well about Boateng, I've clearly answered something that's going to be a question coming up from.
I even put that one in the chat earlier, Sam, but you crack on. You crack on, mate.
You know what? We'll come back to Bundu then. That's fine.
Just do it now. Just do it now. Crack
okay.
on.
Yeah, I think Bundu was really good in a couple of regards. He carried the ball out really well. He had one really good pass out wide to someone, Sorinola maybe. Yeah, he was good with the ball when he had it. He ran sharply with the ball. He drew a foul, and I think that's probably, from a perhaps fairly low bar, the best we've seen from him in his entire time at Argyle so far. And you know what? Actually, I think even in the Coventry game, although he somehow contrived to run himself out of a great one-on-one shooting position, even in that game, I think he looked a lot more lively, a lot more intent. So hopefully something that the manager had said to it, head coach had said to him, has clicked and has fell into place. And we are maybe just starting to see the Beidou who was so impressive in Sweden and in the Europa League. So that's a positive sign, that the improvement of Beidou. Hopefully he can just tear League One up next season with any luck. On the Bocek thing, I think Adam is right. The one point I really want to add to that, by the way, and I think this is genuinely not saying that Adam doesn't agree with this, but a point that makes what Adam said even more baffling, that I think really is worth mentioning. He is the exact profile of a Miran Muslic central midfielder. He's tall, he's quick, he's strong. Maybe not the most technical, but that's not what Muslic really necessarily prioritises from his CMs. He prioritises physicality, he prioritises height, he prioritises strength, all of those things. He is absolutely Miran's CM on paper. So the fact we've brought him in, and you know what, we had a lot of discourse back in January about I was seen as being a bit too unrealistic, demanding new signings, but the one position we absolutely all, from the most to the least of us in terms of signings, the one we absolutely all agreed we needed was a CM. And we brought a CM in, and we've virtually given him next to no game time. I think he's maybe had one league start and one FA Cup start at Man City. And you know what? Even with the Man City, yes, he was very good that day, and yes, we put in a very commendable performance that day. But at the end of the day, if we'd have lost that game 4-1 or 5-1 rather than 3-1, what difference would it have made? So I genuinely think, despite the fact that I feel we woefully under-recruited in January, if that is the best we're going to do in terms of giving minutes to Boateng, we really may as well have just not signed anyone and kept the 500k and played Roberts. Because, if through a genuinely calm recruitment process we decided Boateng is the right one, fine. But if after, 3-4 weeks of panicking about and not knowing who we're going to sign, and we end up kind of settling for Malachi Boateng, then that's wrong, because it's wrong for Argyle, because obviously, we spent a load of money on someone who Miran Muslic had a look at and decided Gilly doesn't fancy very much. It's wrong for the player, because at a critical stage of his career, he's now not getting the game time he needs. It's just wrong for everyone. It's wrong for Caleb Roberts, because he could probably be having those 10-20 minutes at the end of games rather than Boateng. So if we were going to sign somebody, it should have at least been somebody we trusted to sign more than one game, to play more than one game. It's another in a string of baffling decisions. Having said all of that rant, he was good when he came on. So let's just hope that continues.
Let's also consider the possibility that we signed him and we needed that extra body, and then for whatever reason, Miran hasn't been happy with the shifts he's been putting in training. Houghton, Randall and JB and Roberts have done better jobs than him in training. I'm not saying this is true, just saying this is a possibility as to why he's got so few minutes.
Yeah, but I thought we had a policy of we looked into all the personalities of players before they signed. Maybe that's fell out the window along with all the other stuff that's fell out the window. But who knows?
I'm just disappointed that you didn't call him by his real name, Sam, which is Malaki, as we all know. I'm a big fan of Boateng. I think actually next season, I think he's gonna do quite well in League One, but that's purely on vibes.
He does. I really hope he does, despite everything said. I think if he hits the ground running, then yeah, we could see a very different player.
There's a chance, though, potentially that we would want and need more kind of ball-playing centre mids in League One. We're likely to have more of the ball more of the time, coming up against low blocks more often. Is Boateng's profile massively suited to what we'd be trying to do to get promoted out of League One? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, but he could be the CDM that makes that all possible, hopefully, at least. Anyway, moving on to, I know Joe does this, so I've just stolen it from him. Player each that you might want to highlight. Adam, will come to you first, but also, I know that you're not going to pick Victor Paulsen, but can you just give him a quick mention for that? Absolutely robbed of that beautiful assist.
Yeah, disgrace. I've mentioned it before. I'm not allowed to mention Victor Paulsen very much because of the restraining order at this point. But yes, it was a wonderful pass that Sam described very, very articulately. I loved seeing it. It's actually something he did a lot of in Belgium last season. Okay, at a lower level, but it's something that we haven't perhaps seen as much from him this year because he hasn't had the opportunity to do so. Yeah, lovely ball played, and he's got that assisting spirit, and I'll always hold that with me. So we've got that. I will, however, stop there as legally required. I'm going to go on to a player who I'm fairly certain, and I think we're all fairly certain, has played his last game for Plymouth Argyle in Mustafa Bundu. I may be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But the way that he's been playing in the Championship, particularly in the last few weeks, he's the sort of player who will not be ignored on a free by those teams in and around certainly the bottom half of the Championship, and arguably if he keeps that up, the top half as well. I thought his performance yesterday, he was the sort of player who it almost felt like he'd been reinvigorated by the way that his last few weeks had gone, and it reached a crescendo of possibly his best performance so far. And I don't say that lightly because it's got plenty of competition. He's been putting in some wonderful displays against the likes of Coventry. If I go back a little bit to just before Christmas, it was a wonderful display against Middlesbrough as well when he was filling in for his name escapes me. Yeah, he did a wonderful job on the right there, and I just think it came up to this game. Is it the best of the lot? He had a very, very good defence on toast throughout the game. He could easily, the fact that he comes out of that without a goal officially to his name, as well as the pass and assist, it feels very harsh because he could easily have had a couple with a couple of shots just going the right side of that post. But in general, in his transition as well, the fact that he's completed 80% of his dribbles, the fact that he's completed more of those than anybody else on Argyle's side, he had them under constant pressure, and that's a great trait to have against anybody, let alone the best team in the league and the champions of this league. And I could go on mentioning why I love that performance so much. The obvious bittersweetness of it all is that I don't think we'll see him in a Plymouth Argyle shirt again. It almost makes me. There are things that. How can I put this? There's things with this board, the way that we've handled contract situations and player departures that I think are obviously inevitable, where the board do need to take a lot of criticism, and we'll come on to that probably in next week's chat, and indeed for more of this, particularly with the statement that was released, the nothing statement after our relegation was confirmed. I do feel sorry for them, however, with Bundu, because it almost feels like he's hit form in a strange way at just the wrong time. If you were to have this discussion 3 months ago, it probably wouldn't be, we'd be debating, do we offer him a new deal? Do we think he's going to be good enough to take it forward? Whereas now, obviously, it's a no-brainer to offer him a new deal. And if you're his agent, you're in his ear saying, your stock is incredibly high at the moment. Let's try and get the best we can for wherever that may be. It's similar, I guess, to the Finnazaz situation, although, again, I have my reservations with the board on the Finnazaz situation as well, where the form in the 3 months before he becomes available for transfer is so good, it was almost unforeseeable. And the situation that we're in now is, I, for one, am certainly resigned to the fact that we're going to lose him, which is a real shame because, as I say, I think his performance yesterday was top notch, and his performances in recent weeks have been wonderful as well. It's going to be a real shame to see him go. I just, feel like he will, and would love to be proved wrong. And I want to see more performances like that in an Argyle shirt. Imagine the sort of monster he'd be in League One. If he's doing that to Leeds, what's he going to do to the teams in the bottom half of League One? I think he could go nuclear with his figures. I just don't think we're going to be able to see it.
That's a massive cop out from you there, Adam, not naming a club. I was expecting you to name a club that we could say,
weirdly, Fleetwood Town came to mind, then I realised they're not in League One anymore. And then I started panicking, and just as I was finished talking, the likes of Burton Albion popped up as well. So sorry to both the COD Army and the That's Brewers good. There. But
we like to call out teams on this pod, so let's continue that. On exactly that, Dan, I'm not even going to try and pronounce. Well, I am actually. Kerouac 99 on X. Basically, just following on from what Adam's just said there, do you think fans going all in on the board for not tying down Bundu are short-sighted, given that most wouldn't have cared if he left in the January window? Is that true? And B, what's your answer to that?
I'm not sure it is. In my opinion, and I'm not 100% sure if this is the wider opinion, but I sense it may have been, is that Bundu was one of the less bad players in the first half of the season, especially around November, December time when I think he was playing on the right hand side a little bit and was okay there despite the team's failings. So it's a difficult one, and recency bias is a massive thing. I think we saw that in. I disagreed with the player of the season vote. I think Ryan Hardy's had a fantastic second half of the season, but I would have gone with Bundu because he was slightly better in the first half of the season. Ryan really struggled there. So yeah, recency bias is a big thing, and as they say, you're only as good as your last game. So it's fair enough. As Adam said, Bundu has hit form over the last couple of months really strongly, contributed to our pretty good form under Miron Muslic, and it's going to be difficult. And we'll get on to Andrew Parkinson's statement, I'm sure, more later on. But the fact that he said it in the statement as well, and I think we're all realistic enough to know that Championship clubs are going to come in for some of our players, and I'm sure Bundu will be one of those. The offer for far increased wages, as we know a lot of Championship teams do, it's going to be very, very difficult to hold on to a number of players, and I think there will be quite an overhaul. What will make the difference is how we recruit and how we start next season. We were talking about last week about how there's still a reasonable kind of feel-good factor. Some of that has been doused through various reasons over the past week, but we still have the opportunity to take a bit of momentum into next season potentially, and start well. And I think that will really gauge, the fans' mood towards the board and the manager and the players.
Yeah, I've got a question on the player of the season later, so we'll go on to that further. Sam, we've strayed off it a little bit. Player that you want to highlight?
Being off mute helps, doesn't it? Yeah. Final time machine, hopefully. Yeah. I'm going to highlight Maxi Talierov after a relatively long spell out with injury, appearance off the bench at Preston, where he had some very good moments. He was involved in the second goal, no less, but did maybe look a little bit sluggish at times in that game, a little bit off the pace. I thought he was excellent against one of the best attacks in the league. He kept Peru fairly... That's who it was he missed a chance. It wasn't Gruev, it was Peru. Apart from that moment, he kept Peru fairly quiet. He
Isn't that where Paddington Bear's from?
Very funny. He was strong in the air. He was dominant in ground duels as well. Even if he didn't always win them, he would at least put in enough of a competition to make it tough for them and maybe just force them back a little bit. He really actually, his main strength to me is something that we don't generally see him doing too much of this season, which is playing out from the back. Because like I said, I do feel that, as I've said many times in this podcast, that over the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks, the Muslic system has adapted to being quite a reasonably bit more flexible than what it was at first. It's still very as much direct, but I feel that, maybe in the early times we were treating the ball a bit like a hot potato and just get rid of it at all costs. Now there are at least some occasions where we seem a little bit more confident in playing it out, playing it to the wide areas and starting attacks from the back. Maybe still not as much as I'd love to see, but certainly to a larger extent. And I feel Maxi really excelled in that yesterday. Maxi had a lovely through ball to, again, I think Bundu, that started one of Bundu's amazing runs. And he had a very good game all around, really. So he is another one who, along with Mumba, along with Randall and others Bundu we just spoke about, he's another one who I think if we see him here next season, we'll be in a very good place.
Just to reply to
Aaron, why do you hate Sam as for that comment?
Yeah, there's a comment there. Why do I hate you? It's quite a long list, really. wouldn't want to get into it on a pod.
Questions I've answered before you asked. Yeah,
it would be longer than one of Sam's answers. Let's put it that way. I'm not really sure. I've got a question for Dan, but as soon as he didn't watch the game, maybe it's open to everyone. There's quite a few calls for a ref watch. Green Army saying the referee was abysmal. I don't really care about refs, but I don't know if you two, especially now the season's over and relegated. Like, so what? But I don't know if any of you three have.
Doesn't really matter.
One,
Katic missed anyway, but that one at the end was a non-existent foul. I don't know what he's seen there.
Yeah, sure.
It's very strange. I think it's not something that I think was particularly decisive in the game. But yeah, that decision at the end was very strange. I think he was a classic big team bias sort of guy. Although, in saying that, it would be remiss to mention that I do think Leeds had a goal that was wrongly disallowed for offside as well. So maybe it's what goes around comes around. But yeah, not his finest hour. And that decision at the end was. Yeah, I think it was perhaps one of those where he's debating whether or not it was a corner, and because he gave it, he's like, oh well, maybe I'll give a soft foul the other way. We've all seen them do it, and yeah, if it's going to happen, may as well be at a time it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the only things I can really add to that are the three things from the extended highlights, which were the Leeds disallowed goal, which, as you say, Adam, was onside, should have stood. The offside, which led to their winner, which, as we've said, was offside, and then that Katic foul is just not even close to being a foul. If that had gone in, that would have been quite something, wouldn't it? I mean,
There would have been very angry people in Burnley, I think, if that had gone in.
This ref watch would have been a lot longer if it did. We'll put it like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if it had been disallowed, but if it had been allowed to stand and if Katic stuck it on target, which he really should have done, he got a great run on the defender and leapt well and nodded it wide somehow. That would have been, our long rivalry with Burnley, or our rivalry from the 90s, would have been mended a little bit there, I feel.
Yeah. The one thing that did disgust me yesterday was people chanting Burnley's name in the stand. Just that is incredibly tin pot. That's not
the worst chant from yesterday. I'm reliably informed.
No, not as bad as the ones that we had up in Middlesbrough, though. So, swings and roundabouts, I suppose. Adam,
not
Sam's
as bad
already mentioned
the City. We're coming for you. I don't like that one at all.
Goodness.
Being in the same league as that team means something's going wrong, so we shouldn't celebrate it.
Yes, quite.
Yeah. There is somebody from the podcast group chat that was rejoicing in singing that into Sam Down's ear yesterday. So, which I found quite funny. So, can't have it all, I suppose. Adam, question. Sam's already mentioned it in his opening monologue, but that the scenes in the away end for their second just absolutely unrivaled, weren't they? Like, just limbs everywhere.
Yeah, very good. I see we're tweeting those sorts of things from our personal accounts now, if we get recording.
Well, if Joe and Sam can do it, then I'm doing it. So.
It was very good, and I thought, do you know what? It's nice and respectful because as soon as the ball went in, I expected to see half of them on the pitch, and they weren't. They kept it very respectful. They celebrated in their way and kept where they were. Kind of like it. I mean, hey, it's been mentioned before. There's a lot of parallels, isn't there, to how we celebrated it up at Port Vale when we won the title, respectful of their moment, and then had ours. They had the same. I'm struggling to think actually of I mean, for obvious reasons, like not everyone wins the title every week. I'm trying to think of limbs in the Argyle away ends that will top that. I mean, Ant's on a postcard because I can't think of any in a hurry. It usually comes last day. I remember one in particular when Scott Twine's free kick went in for MK Dons, and they were very pleased at the time for obvious reasons, and then didn't go up and are now in League Two. Swings and roundabouts again.
One of the ones I remember for all the wrong reasons was the Scunthorpe Josh Morris goal. None of their fans seemed to have any scruples or hesitation about that, did they? They were all going crazy like they'd won the league.
I'll take your word for that because I was in a blind rage at the time and can't remember exactly what the scenes in the away end looked like. So I'll take your word for that. I mean, it's gone great for Scunthorpe since then as well, hasn't it?
Another year in National League North for them, I think.
What a shame! What a shame. To get roundabout answer your question, I think the scenes not only were they were very good, they were very respectful as well. And it's nice for it to happen in a way where the team that deserves to win the league does win the league. And you often see it, and I think we're just to go to Port Vale again. 2023, the team that deserved to win the league that year won the league that year. It's happened again, and it's nice to see.
Yeah, Sam, you've already.
Sorry, I was just going to say that Harry, who just put the comment up about Derby away, would totally go for that one as away fan limbs. Though I have to say, probably looking at it, Leeds don't win the title for best limbs of the weekend, to be honest. Because I don't know if we've seen Bradford City's last-minute winner to gain promotion, but that was absolute bedlam when they scored that. It's why we love this sport, isn't it?
Our Boreham Wood limbs yesterday, Dan.
Couldn't see. I was in the same stand as them, so
I
couldn't
okay, fair
see.
enough.
But, not massive, I don't think.
I was going to say, but Boreham Wood must be up there. That we're going off topic here, but they must be up there with one of the smallest fan bases in that league alone. Well, surely, like them and Gateshead, maybe. Anyway,
they're in the Conference South now, aren't they?
Well, so, of course, but they're going.
Do
up,
want to see Gateshead there.
Well, they might if they win the next game.
Exactly, they're going up, Sam. Anybody that beats the mighty Torquay deserves to go up. Where were we? Sam, you've already answered my question about the perfectly executed post-match celebrations. Letting us out before allowing them to have their party. But during our lap of honour, Joe Edwards, you're the body language expert. Was he waving goodbye?
Maybe. He didn't actually physically wave that I saw. He looked very calm and reflective in a way that was maybe not just how you would normally look at the end of any season. It did sort of look like he was standing and taking into view one last time, possibly. But no, I wouldn't say definitively. I would say it's very much open-ended. It could have just been the fact that he was just truly gutted by relegation. He was taking a minute to reflect that, despite the relegation, it still was such an amazing club and amazing fans. It could have been nothing more to it. But at the same time, I don't recall him taking quite such a long length of time to, should we say, take things in then as what we have seen maybe on other occasions. So, yeah, two comments. One saying he's going to Cheltenham as player coach and one saying he's going to Forest Green as player coach. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll just say he's going to Swindon as player coach just to, top off that part of the world maybe. Someone's come up saying Bristol Rovers as well. That would be that would top it off, I suppose. Although, I guess Mr. Holloway might have something to say about that. I'm hearing, obviously, they've sacked Calderon today. The rumours are they might be going in for Holloway from Swindon. So who knows ultimately? But we'll see. Comment coming up from Gavin Wilson saying that Joe not a Muslets fan and vice versa. You may very well say that, Gavin. I couldn't possibly comment, but let's say I think there may be a few kind of stylistic differences around style of play and so on.
Well done, Gavin.
Who knows?
Well done, Gavin.
I put it this way. I think it will be one of Joe or Miron at Argyle next season, or neither. I don't think it will be both.
Brilliant. So as our conclusive body language expert, your answer is I don't know. So that's good.
Correct.
We can rule out your opinions on that going forward. Then Dan's already mentioned the player of the season. Is there anything else you guys want to add on the Leeds game specifically before we move on? No, correct answer. Dan's already mentioned the player of the season vote. Ryan Hardy picking up the men's player of the season. Darko JB picking up the young player of the season. I mean, he didn't really have much competition in that, but congratulations, I suppose. Charlotte Whitmore picking up the women's player of the season, and Ella Stevens with the women's young player of the season. Dan, you've already mentioned you're a bit shocked that Hardy won that over Bundu. Sam, any thoughts on that?
Firstly, I want to say absolutely congratulations to Ryan Hardy because this is his 6th season with Plymouth Argyle, and it's the first time he's won Player of the Year. And you know what? He's been so good over those 6 years. I kind of feel he probably should have won Player of the Year once somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
Even if there's very strong contenders on each occasion. I think probably it's one of those things where given how good he's been over the spell of 6 years, you'd kind of hope he would have won it once on average, but I wouldn't have necessarily given it to him on any of the individual times, if that makes any kind of sense. But I want to take huge congratulations to him. He has been the player who's given us, maybe alongside Bundu, the most chance of staying up in this fantastic good run. For me, I would have had him third in the player of the season rankings because I think Hardy and Pleguezuelo both had absolutely excellent second halves of the season. I'd say them third or fourth, but both of those two, in Hardy's case, was off his form first half of the season. In Pleggy's case, didn't play much, and when he did play, wasn't particularly great first half of the season. So as good as those two have been post-Christmas, I'd have them fourth. I'd have them third and fourth. I'd probably have Hazard fifth, because I think he has had a decent season, but his command of area and distribution still a little bit flappy here and there. The top two for me would have been in some permutation Bundu or Randall, and the reason I would have said those two as the top two is the same as what Dan says, really, in the sense that actually you've got to look at who's dragged us up throughout the season. Again, it is not in any way disrespectful to Hardy or Pleggy. I do think that even in the first half of the season, we were better than Hardy played than when he didn't. I would go with that. But in terms of who in that first half of the season was really getting goal contributions and dragging us to points almost out of nowhere, I think that was certainly Bundu in terms of goal contributions. And it was a good run around November, December, and it was Randall in terms of dragging us to points. Like that little good run under Rooney, September, October time, Randall was absolutely pivotal in that very brief spell where it looked like Rooney ball might work. In the sort of bad run under Rooney, he sort of obviously scored the goal at Derby, and even then, even in games like Preston home, when we were largely poor for lots of it, he had some good spells in that game. Even in games like what else? What's the other one I was going to say? Even Watford home, he was the only other player other than Andre Gray who had a half decent game, if I remember rightly. I just feel that he was the player who, without Randall, we would have probably had like a Rotherham style season to an extent. So I would have gone Randall or Bundu. I think I would have just gone for Bundu by a hair's length, given how brilliantly he ended the season. But I would have said Randall or Bundu top two for me. Hardy and Pleggy a very respectable third and fourth. If it was player of 2025 so far, I would probably have just by a fraction gone for Hardy or Pleggy over Bundu. But over the whole season, I'd say my top five, fifth to first, would be Hazard fifth, Pleggy fourth, Hardy third, Randall just second, Bundu top would be my top five in that order, with honourable mentions for Sorinola, who's been decent, and for Maxi, who has been absolutely incredible, but has just not played enough minutes to be in contention.
That's good. I'm glad I didn't ask you for your five-a-side team with beer all night. And I assume you mean a hair's width, Sam. That's not me flirting with you. I don't fancy you. It's just me. I just
hair's width. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, just
maybe a hair's length if it's me, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a joke that I don't even need to explain to the audio listeners because they'll understand that. So, Dan, where the bloody hell is the next question? Should we move on to Andrew Parkinson's statement? That was a nice little read earlier. He's put out a statement in which it says, today's outcome is not one that we are happy about, but given the situation we've been in over recent months, it is not unexpected. Miron and his staff have done a valiant job since they arrived trying to stave off relegation, but unfortunately the task has been too big. The football journey is rarely linear, and there are always setbacks to overcome. Yes, I know. I say the word linear funny. Yes, I know, Sam. It is about how you deal with those and move forward again. And we will be doing everything in our power to make sure we do that. I don't know if anybody's got like any strong overriding thoughts that they want to mention. I feel like Dan might be the one to go to on this.
Well, it's, as I already said, it's kind of noteworthy, but perhaps not unsurprising that he did say, basically, we're going to struggle to keep hold of some players because trying to keep players when we drop down to League One and the money that Championship clubs can offer is just astronomical. So it didn't say a lot outside of that. I mean, I guess a point I'm going to get onto it later. Fair play to him for saying sorry. That's something, not something everyone would say. But yeah, it was, I don't know, not the most inspiring statement, but I am slightly conscious of this thing, and it's the same with manager interviews, really. They can't really say anything wrong when they're winning, and they can't really say anything right when they're losing. This is a little bit of that, but as we'll get on to, some key decisions have to be made this summer. And Andrew, having been a contributor to some bad decisions on the pitch, got to get it right next season. Adam,
at a time where we need answers to some of the questions, especially what Miron stirred up in his press conference, that statement offers none of them really, does it? Or does it? Maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't think it does at all. I feel as though I'm going to take it back to a point that's regularly made, including by myself, of, we hear loads of communication when things are going well and nothing when things are going badly. I'm wondering if this is why. Because when things are going badly, if this is the level of communication we can forget, it would probably be better if he said nothing. Because he effectively did. It was a case of, things have been a bit shit, haven't they? Sorry. Things might be good soon. Bye. Okay, yeah, ideal. Thanks for that, Andrew. Yeah, no, I feel like you've covered all bases there, and now I'm so confident heading into next season. The fact is, there are loads of unanswered questions right now, and of course, he's not able to come out and say, we're going to be keeping the head coach. We're going to be offering him this budget. We're going to be offering this specific contract to this player. Of course, that can't happen. But there's surely got to be a little bit more substance than he offered, right? In terms of meat on the bones, it was vegetarian. I don't know. It's it's not something that set the pulses racing. Of course, when you've just been relegated, don't expect something to set the pulses racing for optimism into the season ahead. You've just gone down. It kind of comes with the territory. But that was particularly bland compared to the sort of thing that you can hear. I mean, I've seen some comments coming in that I'm in total agreement with. He's had how long to come up with this? We've known we're going to be relegated for definite for at least a week, and realistically for a number of months. And is this the best statement they could have come up with in those months? I'm kind of disappointed if it is, but apparently so. Yeah, I was not particularly thrilled with it. I guess you can't be particularly thrilled with that sort of statement. And yeah, as Dan said, there's lots of decisions to be made now, and there's a lot of key decisions to be made. And ultimately, as much as I've gone in on those words, actions speak far, far louder. So get those decisions right, and I'll stop being disappointed by the nothing statements. But you've got to get them right now.
So I've got a few comments on this, and I'm maybe a little bit more generous toward the statement than Adam, in the respect of, I do think it's very tough to go into specifics. Where I agree, I would have liked to have seen some more. I'm not totally whitewashing it. If I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more accountability and explanation as to the framework that led us to those decisions. I get that it's maybe not very professional of him to throw Wayne Rooney under the bus in a statement and say, we're very sorry we hired Wayne. He was a disastrous decision. As a pro, he's not going to do that, but and rightly so not. But I would maybe like to see a little bit more of the explanation that led into that decision, and maybe the learnings we're going to take from it specifically to so that doesn't happen again. I do agree that there could have been a bit more meat on the bones, but on the same hand, I do also feel there were a couple of little nuggets in there actually that were quite interesting. Like this paragraph, for instance, it says here, "We have brought in very experienced external support to assist with recruitment operations during this period of transition. They have been working closely with Miron and the wider football leadership team, and our summer rebuild plans are in a very good place." Hang on a minute, who are they? Who are these experienced people? We've not had any announcements of people being appointed, have we? That to me is absolutely something the club should be transparent about. Now, you're not just sneaking it in like so in a 2/3 of the way down a very long statement. What external are we talking about? Outsourcing to some kind of data firm? Are we talking about maybe, I don't know, some kind of interim sporting director? What's the situation that's actually going on here? I think that's something that should be announced. If we've got any kind of interim person involved, that's an appointment. Surely the club should be making public, as they would any other appointment. That's there's a couple of names in the comments speculating maybe who it might be. I don't know. I couldn't comment into that, but yeah, that's just my take on it.
Yeah, no idea, Sam. Sam, what needs to happen then in order for there's a question from you Greens on X. What do you think needs to happen in order for the board to bridge the gap between the fans and the boardroom? Is it purely just that transparency that you just called for?
I would say so. Yeah, I honestly feel that is the kind of thing that should be its own announcement. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm being a miserable old curmudgeon, like I perhaps can be known to be on this pod. I just feel that's the kind of thing that should have its own announcement if we're sort of having any kind of temporary recruitment structure. We'd have an announcement for a temporary manager in this day and age, or a temporary head coach. And I think in this day and age, a sporting director, head of director of football, whatever name you want to give to it, is as pivotal, if not more pivotal, for the success of the club as a head coach is. So I think that's absolutely the kind of thing that should be transparency about. And again, I'm glad they've at least mentioned it. I'd rather they mention it than not mention it at all. But I think there should be a little bit more on that. Absolutely. And I think that's a little nugget that's not really been mentioned very much. And I feel that it probably should be. But there we go. Maybe we'll hear more about that. Maybe we won't. But I think that, yeah, look, I'm not here just to be an absolute dickhead and call people out and slag people off, because I know they do a very testing job, and they do a very
family-friendly show.
Yeah, I know they do a very testing job, and at the end of the day, 3 teams have got to go down, and we're one of the teams with the lower budgets. And yes, in football, as Simon Hallett rightly said, you make gambles. Some of them work out, some of them don't. Now, Miron Mudlic, as it turned out, has worked out by the look of it, but obviously there are others that don't. So I'm not here just to be a, gobby voice having to go at the club, because I genuinely, if I'm moaning at the club, because I want the club to do better. And I think absolutely the first step on that is having transparency. So there is that accountability and there is that dialogue between the club and the fans. And I genuinely feel it's not just in our interest as a fan base, it's in the interest of them as well. Because if there is that constant dialogue and there is that transparency, they will get a lot more slack let off them by fans, like people like me who moan on podcasts, but also the people who are, shall we say, maybe a little less eloquent than me, who whip up tensions on Twitter, maybe. So I think, I think they are. Maybe, I'm not going to say their own worst enemy. That'd be going a bit harsh, but I think they could help themselves more in that regard. That's my constructive feedback to them if they are listening to this.
Yeah. Nice and modest, as ever, Sam. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to add before we move on to some questions that have been sent in?
I think this is probably the kind of time to raise this rant, and I'll try and match Sam's on this, on the basis that I'm not on next week's pod. And it's with regards to the board and especially Simon Hallett. The only kind of clunky metaphor I can really use to describe this is someone like winning the Nobel Peace Prize, and then getting done for assault or GBH or something like that. Because go back 18 months, we were being regarded as one of the best run clubs in the country. And quite rightly. Simon Hallett was doing a fantastic job. We were, sky high. He took us into the Championship. And since then, there have been some awful decisions that have been made. And I want to give credit where it's due and criticism where it's due. Some people are saying, it was kind of luck, the low appointment and all of this stuff. It fell into place for him. Look, maybe, but I think he does deserve credit for where he got us. Absolutely. However, then came the Ian Foster appointment, which was a mistake. It was a gamble. And for me, it was a forgivable mistake. We couldn't have known that Foster was going to start acting in the way that he did, start treating some of the senior players in the way that he did. And, to give Simon credit, he sacked him just in time for us to retain our Championship status. As long as that was lesson learned, then fair enough. So be it. We move on. We're still a Championship club. However, then came, what. And we talk about gambles, but a gamble should be a calculated gamble, not pure stupidity. And that is what the appointment of Wayne Rooney was. Complete and utter stupidity. I said it back in June when he was appointed, or May, end of May. that our championship status will depend on how quickly we sack this man. And lo and behold, we've got to the end of the season and everyone's saying, oh, if only we'd sacked him 6 weeks earlier after Norwich and Bristol City. Now, I'm not saying this as like, oh, I'm some kind of footballing genius, like I'm the oracle or whatever, because it was so flipping obvious. The man who has failed everywhere he has been as a football manager comes to Plymouth Argyle. What's going to happen? And all of our fans, seem to kind of get swept up in all of it and say, this guy's going to, it's going to be different here. And, he does a couple of appearances in pubs and some media training basic quotes. And, it seemed to be all it was going to take. And, fair play for being so optimistic and glass half full, because I certainly wasn't. But why did you think that it was going to be any different here to where it had been at Birmingham, at Derby, at DC United? It was not a gamble, it was stupidity from Simon Hallett and the board. And we're not stupid. I know Simon went on TalkSport and said about, underlying data and, he improved DC United in attack and all this rubbish. We know why he appointed him. Big name, raised the profile of the club. And also, I'm afraid to say it, I think it was pure arrogance. It was Simon wanting to be different and wanting to go against the grain. And the fact that the entire country, everyone in the media was writing him off and laughing at us, he liked, because he would have seen that as, look how clever I'm going to look if this works. And, well, sorry to break it to you, but there's a reason why the entire country was laughing at us. And so it is proven. Yeah, like I say, I want to give credit where it's due. And also, for appointing Miran Muslic, which has seemed to have worked. From that point, when he sacked him, he has done some redeeming. But the appointment in the first place of Wayne Rooney is borderline. Like I said, the Foster one I can forgive as a gamble that didn't pay off. The Rooney one is borderline unforgivable. And I think the things that Simon and the board need to do to try and kind of win back a lot of the fan base, myself included, is if it's Muslic next season or whoever it is, if Muslic doesn't stay, back them to the hilt and get us back in the Championship, because we shouldn't have gone down. It was an unnecessary relegation. Yes, I know that budgets are, we're up against it financially and we can't compete with some of the other clubs to outpunch them. But clubs at this level make stupid decisions. They waste money. They have more money than sense. And we, with that appointment, became one of those clubs that had no sense. It was a completely stupid decision. So he's got to get us back into the Championship. I'm going to be quite bullish about that. Also, the other thing, and I touched on it with Parkinson's statement, is come out and say sorry, Simon, please. I would respect him a lot for doing that and just saying, look, I saw the flashing lights. I got starstruck by this guy. And yeah, I hold my hands up. I was looking at all the wrong things when it came to appointing a head coach or a football manager. And I shouldn't have done it. And I'm very, very sorry. I will not make that mistake again. That would do a lot of healing for the fan base. And if we have a good season next season and get back up, then fantastic. He would have gone a long way to repair that damage. But if we don't next season, if we say finish outside the top 6, we're pretty much back where we started when he took over in 2018. And all that fantastic work that he did from 2019 up to 2023 to get us where we were on the pitch will have been for absolutely nothing. And it just hurts. It really, really hurts. And it's like Sam said, it's because, I want them to do better. Transparency, yes, maybe, but just make better decisions in the first place, for goodness sake. So, yeah, credit where it's due for the fantastic job he did up until 2023. But the last 18 months, in particular, the appointment of Wayne Rooney has been a shambles. And he's got to do a lot to repair that damage. Rant over.
Brilliant. Adam, keeping it on we're going to move on to some questions that have been sent on, and keeping that on a very positive No, Argyle Tweets has asked, would be interested to hear whether you guys think that Miran Muslic is manufacturing his own exit. Whilst we're having a little positive stint, why not keep it happy?
Yeah, no, I'm pleased we went with this because I do genuinely think this links in with what Dan said just a moment ago, which, by the way, kudos to you. I agree entirely with what you've just said there about that appointment, which was a disgrace, and an arrogant disgrace at that. There have been a few comments of that just on the cuff tonight, and a few times like, oh, well, at least the Muslic appointment has worked. And don't get me wrong, Miran Muslic appears to be a very good coach, and it appears to be very good at what he's done. It's got us playing so much better than we were beforehand. Just a few weeks after some people told us that nobody could do better with this squad than Wayne Rooney, it turns out, yeah, everyone could, including this guy who'd just been sacked in Belgium. Miran Muslic is excellent. I'd love to see him stay around, and I think he's genuinely done a good job. That does not necessarily mean that it's a successful appointment if he's not around next season. Because we would have known, in fact, we'd have been near certain in going to appoint somebody in January that we were going to be a League One club by the end of the campaign, barring a miracle, particularly with the point totals that were required and what would have been needed. It would have taken something miraculous for us to stay up. So in making that appointment, the board absolutely should have had one eye on the long term. And surely they did by giving the guy a 3.5-year contract. Surely it was in their thinking of, we might be stepping down a division here, and we're going to trust this guy to bring us back up. And now we're in a situation where I am by no means certain that Muslic is going to be in place next season. I hope he is, but right now I'd lean towards it feeling less likely that he will be than he is. And so what's happened? One of two things has happened. Either the board did not do that forward planning. They were so sold on the idea that Muslic was going to keep us up that it didn't matter that we may be in League One next season because it's just not going to happen. Or something has happened across the last 4 months. And I think this is more likely, by the way. Something has happened across the last 4 months where Muslic's like, actually, I don't like what's going on here. I don't want to stay here, and I'm going to look for something elsewhere. Now, that could be something very innocent. That could be a case of Muslic is looking at this and going, much as I imagine Bundu's agent is doing, his agent's in his ear saying, hey, yeah, I think your stock's particularly high at the moment. If there's a job that comes up at championship level, I think you could be in the frame for it. And his head could be turned by that. We've seen it before, right? What could also have happened, and what certainly wouldn't surprise me, is that Miran Muslic has worked out just how shambolic the running of this club has been in the last 18 months and gone, I don't particularly want anything to do with that. I'd rather be out of here if I can, and I'd rather take another opportunity, as, by the way, we've also seen in the past with certain head coaches. Something somewhere has gone wrong. And I'm hoping that something is non-serious. That's something that can be resolved. And we'll end up being in a situation at the start of next season where Miran Muslic is at the helm and we can be genuinely optimistic again. Because honestly, a week ago, like just before we played Preston, in fact, I genuinely felt very optimistic. I'd accepted we were going to go down because of course we were. But with the momentum that we built, with the head coach in place, who I rate very highly, I was going into this season with a lot of optimism, and now I don't know where I am, because it could be a case that he's manufacturing his own exit. It could be a case that he's giving these answers because he's genuinely not sure whether he's going to be here, genuinely not sure whether he's going to get the backing he needs, and here we are in another mess. Again, as I say, I'm going to go back to the point. I am hoping that this is something that can be resolved. I'm hoping that it'll be a case that the board or whatever's left of the board and Muslic can be sitting around the table, get a plan in place, and get us into a situation where we're putting it right. But I can't be sure right now. I don't think any of us can be sure with the noises coming from the club and the noises coming from the manager himself that we're in a good place right now. It's bizarre, and I certainly wouldn't put it past the fact that Muslic is controlling that media narrative in a way of manufacturing his own exit. I hope he isn't, of course, but yeah, he may well be.
I'm going to give my perspective on it here, and I do share some of what Adam. Thank you, Aaron. I do share certainly some of what Adam has said. I think the football side of the club has been pretty badly run over the last 18 months. But at the same time, I think that Miran Mudlic is very, very good at controlling the media and controlling the narrative. And I do think that in a scenario whereby he just wanted to manage in the Championship and he just wanted to manage in a, or a top European league, I do think he's very good at controlling the narrative. And I do think he would, in such a hypothetical scenario whereby he did just want to go for his own career prospects, I think he is a skilled enough communicator to communicate that to the fans in a way that essentially exonerates him from blame. There is a little bit of me, and I am genuinely open-minded, as much as I may appear not, there is a little bit of me that wonders, even if we did all of this stuff on his nice little tick list, whereby we appointed a new permanent sporting director, we appointed a new permanent head of recruitment, and we, whacked a big contract on the table that Bundu signed up to and that Randall signed up to, and we did all of that within the next 10 days, I am still a little skeptical that Miran Mudlic would not want to go to, a QPR or West Brom if they came knocking. I am being as brutally honest as I can about that, because I do think he has clearly got some affection for the club. I'm not going to be, I'm not one of these ultra cynical people who said it's all fake, it's like Holloway. I think he does have some affection for the club, but at the same time, I think knowing from how confident a speaker he is, from how relentlessly persistent he is, how motivated he is, how high his standards are, I think he's a very, very career-focused individual, and I don't think he would, in all honesty, unless we give him a very, very appealing budget package and, the promise of investment, maybe, who knows, maybe that will finally be confirmed soon, I don't know. But I don't think for a minute he will stay up. Let me explain it this way. I don't think for a minute he will stay at Argyle out of any sense of obligation, in terms of the sense of, well, we've gone down, I need to stay and put it right. Or, I'd stay because I love Plymouth, because I love the Green Army. I don't think that will play much of a part. I think Miran Mudlic will do what's best for Miran Mudlic and what's best for his career. And that, by the way, is not a criticism, because I think that is true of 99%, maybe more, of footballers or football managers. I genuinely do think that. So that's not me denigrating him as a person. It's just that I think a lot of his, shall we say, more salubrious comments are perhaps a little overdone. And I do think that if he wants to move, it won't be because of the bad decisions made off the pitch. It will be because he gets a better offer, or he has the high prospect of a better offer. So I do think it is worth bearing that in mind a little bit. So I know, sorry, it's going to be a bit of a long answer. I'm going to shift now the focus away slightly from what I think the motivations are behind why he wants to leave to what we can do to stop that happening. Because even me, even Mr. Negative, Mr. He wanted Shuey, never going to accept Mudlic, he has won me round greatly the last few weeks, without a shadow of a doubt. Not obviously partly the adaptation in style of football, like I alluded to earlier, but also primarily the results. And the fact that he's a very effective coach, very effective communicator. He's got the best out of Hardy. He's got the best out of Bundu. And I think that, compared to some of the, I don't want to say bang average, but I think the caliber of him as a coach and an individual, compared to maybe some of the League One managers, I think he'll be able to outfox quite a lot of them. I really, really do. So, and I do think that ultimately, he does have some affection for the club, without a shadow of a doubt, even despite what I said just now. I think on the other hand, he's replying to Argyle Voodoo on Twitter, for goodness sake. You don't do that unless you're when he's at home with his family. You don't do that unless you have some passing interest in what's going on. So I do think that if we, despite what I said earlier, that if we offered him a contract extension on the table, offered him a wage rise on the table, offered him pretty much carte blanche with, final say on the playing budget, who knows, maybe even change his job title from head coach to manager, if that's going to make a difference. If we offer him all of that, I think he would, to say at the least, be very, very tempted. So I don't really want to go too much. The irony of that, not lost, I spent 3 minutes talking about it, but I don't want to spend too much more time talking about, is it a case of Muslic, being a Machiavellian and manoeuvring his own exit, or is it a case of Muslic being very honest and, just being frustrated with how badly the club's being run? Maybe it's, I think, as with all these things, the boring answer is it's probably somewhere in the middle. But what we can do to prevent that happening is we can tie him down, offer him what he wants, offer him a blank check, within reason, a blank check. Obviously, don't risk, insolvency of the club. But we have a lot of money now that we've made this season, potentially investors coming in soon. I really hope that this can be worked out, because I don't want another to end in a way that's sour. Because, like I alluded to earlier about, my tongue-in-cheek comment about less eloquent people or whatever, I do think there will be an absolute riot against the board if he goes. I think people will be very angry. There'll be lots of invective being thrown about online, and I don't support them. I don't support that kind of, poison pen style communication that we see from some people towards Simon Hallett or towards the board of directors. Not on at all. But I think that is what we're going to see if the news we're not wanting next week comes to light of him going. So let's just do all we can. And you know what? If we have that kind, this is where I'm going to come into land with my point, Aaron, you'll be pleased to know. If we have that conversation with him, if we up the budget, commit to this and that, get round the table with Bundu and Randall, not that we've necessarily not offered them contracts, but maybe up our offers, whatever it takes. And if we offer Miran Muslic himself a new contract on that basis, and despite all that, he decides to go anyway, fair enough. At least then we know it's down to him wanting to leave. It's not down to our inadequacies. And you know what? If we do all those kind of things and he goes, then we're setting the club up in a great place for the next head coach to come in. So there's no downside to doing this. We need to get it together. We need to sit down and try and mediate with him, really iron out what his problems are and get to the bottom of it.
Just had 875 viewers drop out during your talk there, Sam. Not because of you, because we actually have. There's an issue there's an issue streaming to Twitter. So if you're watching on Twitter,
not actually due to me then.
then come and find us on YouTube. But if you're already listening to this and you hear me say that, you're already listening on YouTube. So whatever, I don't know. You'll sort it out. We're gonna finish on one more question. One more question from STB_93. Bundu, Mumba, Hardy, Randall, probably the four would most like to keep in League One, but most likely to lose. Which player should we be looking to hang on to the most? So if to pick one, all in, but we lose the other three. Dan,
I think of those four, Bundu is probably the best player of the four. However, looking at it from a resale value point of view and their potential, Bundu is, I believe, 27. Hardy's 27, whereas Randall and
they're
Mumba
both
are
28. Sorry, Hardy and Bundu.
Oh, sorry, they're 27 till they're 28. That's how it works. And Mumba and Randall are 23 and 24. I believe.
Mumba's 24, Randall's 24. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of potential and the fact that potentially haven't reached their peak yet, I think that it's between those two, and I'd probably say it's difficult. I'd probably say Randall of the two. I think that he could really progress. His game has come on a lot in the 2 years since we've been in the Championship, and I think he has got more to give. Would it be the best move for his career to if another Championship club that comes in, perhaps? Maybe it would, but hopefully we can keep hold of him, and he'd boss League One. I have little doubt of that. Key area of the pitch, centre mid. Like I said earlier, we're going to need a little bit more ball playing ability, because I would expect us to have more of the ball, come up against low blocks and have to kind of break teams down rather than being kind of resolute and organised and sitting deep ourselves. So, I could see Randall being a pivotal part of that in getting us back up. If another club comes in and offers him silly money, then yeah, it's going to be tough to turn down and tough to persuade him to stay. I think that'd be the case for any of the four of them, to be honest. But yeah, I do think, and also from a leadership potential, captain material point of view, yeah, definitely Rands is the one I'd want to keep.
On an emotional level and on a practical level, I agree. I think he's got huge resale value. There's been a lot of speculation about what his release clause is. I won't say the figure I've heard out loud on the stream, but let's just say it's not as high as people would like it to be. So I think with that, if we can tie him down to a new contract that says, if you don't get promoted, there will still be a release clause that's still, reasonable to you, but maybe a bit more reasonable to us. But let's just say we're going to back you. We're going to give you the armband. Because I think that even if Joe Edwards does remain at the club, I don't think he's going to be a starter. And we'll give Randall the armband as part of the package of what we're offering him, and do all we can to convince him to stay. And on an emotional level, seeing a Plymouth boy captaining a Plymouth team, leading us to the League One title would be really something quite special in that regard. But I'm going to give a word for Mumba as a very close runner-up, because I do think we've kind of slept on Mumba a bit and how good he can be, because in the right system and in the right shape, he's absolute dynamite. He's got to be either a left wing back or a very attacking left back. Anything else, forget it. He's not good on the right. He can have some okay games there, but by and large, he's not good on the right. And we definitely didn't see the best of him in that half season under Schumacher when he was in the front three. So he is left-sider, wing back. Now, as it happens, we certainly for now, who knows what will happen? We have a head coach who only plays wing backs. He virtually never plays back four. So with that, I think we are, and finally, by the way, like I say, everyone has played Mumba in the wrong position until Muslic, partly necessitated by their own formational choices, which is fair enough. You can't build a whole team around him. But Schumacher played Mumba in the front three. Foster bizarrely had the right formation for Mumba, but decided he was only going to play him on the right, which, whatever. Rooney played him as a defender. Again, that's his formation, fair enough. Muslic initially fell into the Foster mistake of only playing him on the right, but eventually came to realise he's far, far better on the left, and he's now kept him there ever since. So with that regard, I think Mumba, and given how good Mumba has been in our run of form over the last 10 games, which has been probably upper mid-table for the league in that space of time, how good Mumba's been, we are underestimating the potential that Barley Mumba could be League One player of the season next year. I'm calling that one early. He could absolutely tear the league apart with how good he is. So I'm really excited about that prospect. So it's just Randall, but Mumba a very close runner-up. Hardy and Bundu, it would also be sad to see them go without a doubt. Certainly with Bundu being a free transfer would sting, but there's perhaps not so much long-term resale value with those. Whereas with Randall and Mumba, there's quite a bit, I would say.
What you say about Mumba tearing League One up, I mean, he did that 2 years ago, didn't he? And he's I'd say a better player now, more experienced player now than he was then. So the thought of him at left wing back in League One next season is scarily good.
Adam, of those four?
It depends how we look at it, because from a business sense, if we're going to negotiate hard with one, it would obviously have to be Bundu, because we'd at least be compensated had we lost the other three, but Bundu going would give us nothing. So that's the one, if we're going to be able to make an offer immediately, I'd be going for. In terms of which one I'd want to keep if we could only keep one, I think I kind of agree with the consensus. I'm really looking forward to seeing Mumba in League One next season, and particularly if we get to run in his right position, which, as it stands, heavy caveat there, he's set to do. I just feel like he'll sit slightly behind Randall in my ranking, simply because of what Randall offers at both ends of the field. He's posted numbers that don't look out of place in the Championship, to be honest. And if clubs in the Championship do come in for him, it would not come as a surprise. Whereas with Mumba, I rate him, don't get me wrong, but he's not quite shown the same level this season as I think Adam Randall has. obviously signified by the fact that nobody's really put Mumba's name forward for player of the season, and we have for Randall. So yeah, I think Randall just above, but if we can keep him and Mumba, then we're certainly laughing. But in terms of who it makes business sense to go after straight away, it's Mustafa Bundu. Get that contract there if it's not already.
Nice. Anything anybody wants to add before we wrap this up and call it a night, and you can all watch the rooms? No.
See you all on Tuesday for the Mirror Emergency Pod. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. That's slap wrist. Joke.
Too soon.
No, Sam. But there will be an emergency pod should any emergency news break, which let's hope it doesn't. But who knows? Who knows? Certainly not Sam and his ITK sources. Anyway, I think we'll call that a night. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and all your major podcast platforms. And then that's basically, isn't it? And we're back next week. Joe's back next week, doing a season review, and then looking forward. Basically, I'm just going to title it something like "Who's to Blame" because that'll get a few clicks, wouldn't it? Is it Rooney? Is it Hallett? Is it Foster? Is it? I don't know. It's somebody's fault, isn't it? So, yeah. All right. Love you. Bye.